We, as Indigenous women, have so much to lose, to exist in silence while our people drown themselves in booze, trying to erase the memory of a damaged generation. But it's easier to stay quiet than to heal an entire nation, so we suffer.
That's Mary Black, and she's been getting a lot of attention for that video. Her poem, Quiet, has more than 120,000 Facebook views. It shares a powerful message about abuse and trauma faced by Aboriginal people. The Ojibwe artist says the poem is a response to years of keeping silent about shame and oppression. Performance artist and musician Mary Black joins us now from our studio in Winnipeg. Thanks for coming in. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you. This is a really powerful poem, and tell us what inspired you to do this.
Well, the topic that I chose to speak about, silence, quiet, it is a disease that really plagues our communities and really our nation, but like my people have suffered for so long, and I wanted to bring attention and awareness to what being quiet does, and how everybody has suffered in silence for such a long time. Yeah.
So why do you think, we saw 120,000 people have looked at this, why do you think the poem resonated so strongly?
I think because so many people can identify with the issues I talked about in there. I mean, I spoke directly to, sexual abuse and violence against women and the CFS system and all these things that people are so used to keeping silent about, and I think it really just resonated with so many people. I got a lot of support from the video, and so many people coming forward, telling their own stories and breaking their own silence because of it, like thousands of shares, and it was really amazing.
When you talk about people who are coming and sharing their stories, breaking their silence, what is one that really stuck with you?
Oh, you know what, there's been so many stories, and all of them are so beautiful and moving and powerful. I mean, there's people who have written to me who are a part of the 60s Scoop, residential school survivors that are talking to me about their own experiences of abuse and of addictions and violence. It's really difficult for me to pick one. Yeah, because there's just so many. Like it's been really overwhelming, but phenomenal to be a part of this.
Absolutely. You were an actress for 10 years and you've turned to spoken word. How different of an experience is this for you?
It was a huge change for me. I'm so used to putting on a mask and speaking as characters and telling somebody else's story, and for once I wanted to tell my story. I just felt so much inside of me that was boiling, and my own voice. Like I wanted the people to hear my story and to not, and to release the shame and the guilt and the stigma against all these things and all these issues. And I was so surprised that this is like the most attention I've gotten for any of the pieces of work that I've done. And so I think that speaking in my own voice and telling my own stories is something I'm going to continue to do and work on in different projects.
And what was the tipping point for you to break the silence?
You know what, I studied residential school a while back, and I heard so many horrible stories, and I didn't even know that this had happened to my people. I didn't understand. I was very confused when I was young, seeing so many people struggling with addictions, family violence, intergenerational trauma, and I didn't understand where that came from. So when I learned about the residential schools and I started speaking to the elders about it, and I heard these horrific stories, about children, like 6-year-olds getting their tongues stuck with needles if they spoke their language, and getting beaten till they're bleeding, and these horrible acts of violence against these children, these innocent children. I really had a new understanding, and I understood why there's so much silence in our communities. I mean, it is intergenerational, and that shame and the guilt is passed down because that's what they were taught, and it was beaten into them, for years and years. 16 years, some people stayed there, and to have that and be treated that way for such a long time, it's almost impossible to not hand those, that pain down to the next generation. Really, I'm only the third generation. My grandma was a residential school survivor, and so I understand a lot more why there are so many families that are struggling. And breaking the silence is something that has to happen. It is medicine for the soul. And I think until we learn to speak about our stories and about what happened to us, and without the shame, without the guilt, and we learn to accept what has happened, that's when we can move forward. And it isn't until we break the silence and we acknowledge all these horrible things that have happened and our own mistakes as individuals, because it's impossible to not make mistakes when we're dealing with this amount of trauma and this amount of violence and shame. It's so necessary for people to use their voice, because that's how our soul will heal.
Absolutely. And for you, you said that you're going to continue on doing these types of poems. Is that correct?
Yeah, and working with, suicide and addiction, speaking on these issues to young people. And I try to do that with music already. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to bring back, the traditions and the language using music, hip-hop music, so it speaks to the youth and gives them a positive message in a way that they can understand. Because, we have to find new ways of dealing with these problems. There's so many of them, but really the youth are the future. They're our future. And if we can heal them, if we can speak to them in a language that they can understand, and I believe that, it'll be a brighter future for all of us.
Absolutely. Mary Black, thank you for coming in and speaking out and breaking the silence and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Performance artist Mary Black joining us from Winnipeg.